As we developed the NTDC content for piloting, this theme was originally developed as a right time theme. But the feedback during piloting was loud and clear. Parents need concrete and targeted content on the topic of sexual trauma. And this 1.5-hour classroom theme on parenting a child with a history of sexual trauma was developed. Facilitators recognized that this theme was essential information for all parents who wish to foster or adopt for many reasons. Many parents say they don't feel like they can meet the needs of a child with a history of sexual trauma. But for many children, this history is unknown. It's often the case that the child has not yet disclosed this information. They've often not felt safe or too ashamed, or maybe they were scared of getting in trouble. So as participants can learn more about how to parent a child with a history of sexual trauma, it destigmatizes the topic, and they realize that with good strategies and house rules in place, parenting a child with this type of trauma is really doable. Now let's talk about the nuts and bolts of this theme. We begin this theme by acknowledging that many have concerns related to parenting a child with a history of sexual trauma, and we'll give participants the opportunity to get these concerns out in the open. By acknowledging, we can address the concerns and we can destigmatize talking about sexual trauma. We get to assure them that these common concerns will be addressed all throughout this training. Section 2 brings in the very strong right time video that brings together the real experts in the field, a parent, and professionals who have successfully parented or worked with children who have experienced sexual trauma. The video will be followed by a processing of what stood out, and a slide and a handout will also be given with key points. We'll go over a definition of sexual abuse to understand and demystify it, and then we'll use a flip chart activity to name forms of sexual abuse that include no contact and others that do involve physical contact. It also makes clear the impact of the violation of trust. In Section 3, we'll review the risk factors and indicators of sexual trauma. There are process questions to get participants in touch with their feelings about the behaviors and how to manage them. But we also offer the clear message: any child can be at risk for sexual trauma. While we often focus on stranger danger, most children are abused by someone they know and trust. In this team, we'll continue to make the point that children who have experienced sexual trauma are very vulnerable and need the support of their caregivers to give them clear messages about the abuse and about sexuality. Section 4 focuses on how parents can create an emotionally safe environment. This includes understanding how to respond if a child discloses sexual abuse to the parent. We let participants know how we help the child best by staying calm, by listening and supporting them, realizing that we're not the ones that will need to do the investigation. We make clear that a parent's role is to focus on supporting the child. This section also addresses the frequent concern of parents: how to handle or avoid a false allegation. We've got tips and a handout for parents addressing this topic. To keep all family members safe, we'll also go over the importance of developing and following house rules for everyone in the family. The section ends with a brief activity where we'll ask participants to write down 5 rules they would create if they were to parent a child with a known history of sexual abuse. And a handout, House Rules for Sexual Safety, has been developed to give parents additional ideas on how to develop a useful plan to help ensure everybody's safety. In Section 5, Strategies to Prevent Further Abuse, useful strategies are reviewed. The most important prevention strategy is the establishment of a strong, trusting parent-child relationship. Structure and house rules around things like bedrooms, bathrooms, privacy, and understanding ideas around consent are also addressed. A case study of a 6-year-old is used for participants to think about how they could respond to a child's sexually reactive behaviors, including how they could protect all the children in the home. We'll end this section with psychoeducation about what's typical versus atypical sexual behavior and concrete things to do if a child shows sexual behaviors that are atypical. A very important point we want to make is that the vast majority of children with a history of sexual abuse do not engage in sexual abuse of other children. Section 5 also addresses the importance of the parent promoting healthy sexual development for the child. There's a handout you'll review in class that spells out behaviors that indicate interrupted sexual development compared to typical sexual development and how parents can respond to the child at different ages to promote healthy sexual development. For example, parents need to be comfortable having candid conversations about sex with children and teens, about such things as sexual identity, dating, boundaries, and consent. Now let's talk about some key takeaways from this theme. With additional knowledge, skills, and strategies, parenting a child with a history of sexual trauma can be done in ways that help a child heal and keep everyone safe. All parents who wish to foster or adopt need to learn this additional knowledge, skills, and strategies because a history of sexual trauma is often unknown. Most children who have a history of sexual trauma don't engage in sexually aggressive behaviors towards other children, and that's important to know. Parents should be able to notice typical versus atypical sexual behavior. And a huge part of a child's healing will be developing trust and open communication in the parent-child relationship. So let's talk about where you might get tripped up facilitating this theme. It's not unusual for there to be strong feelings and concerns about this topic. And one topic in particular that causes anxiety for parents is the prospect of false allegations. So if parents seem to be getting lost in this, acknowledge it, let them know that there's a handout that addresses more information, let them know you can share any agency policies and guidelines, but then move forward, because it could be an easy place for them to get stuck, and then you'd all miss out on more important parts of the theme. Also, there's a long video in this theme, which could get distracting for some of the participants. But this one's really interesting and useful, so hopefully it won't be, but watch your participants to see what their needs are during the video, including that they could have any emotional reactions during it. It would be especially good for participants to take notes during this longer, important video. When we take the fear and stigma away from sexual trauma, so many more parents will be able to go on to support children with this experience. It's powerful and it's possible when they understand and they have the tools. As we heard Debbie Shug say in the video, her daughter saw herself as damaged goods, but it was her mom that gave her the aha that she was a survivor and that was what she decided to tattoo on herself instead.